Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bonsoir, mes amis. I wish that there was a better game to talk about than this one. I did not enjoy that. I'm sure none of you did either. I have a feeling that the views will not be high on this game. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to talk about it, and I totally understand that. Regardless, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight. We'll probably try to get through this one pretty quick because I don't think anybody wants to stick around too long talking about this game. But welcome to the new office, the new studio, I guess you would call it. It is not yet finished, but some pretty cool stuff happening here so far. It's going to be even cooler as we go forward and continue building it. But yeah, lots of fun here. Unfortunately, the Habs lose 7-0 to the Dallas Stars in a game that really was not that. I think that most people who watched that game should come away with the conclusion that it was a huge outlier game, and it shouldn't be one that you spend too much time thinking about. But there are some things that need to be hit on with that game. So we'll get into it. We're going to talk about the Alex Newhook injury, how this game got out of control for the Montreal Canadiens. In the second segment, we're going to talk about something I noticed in the broadcast. The last two games, Canadiens lose against Western opponents, and a very familiar narrative is being spread. And we're going to talk about that in the second period. And then in the third period, we're going to talk about the cascade effect of injuries and why I think this was not a long time coming because the season's pretty young, but this was predictable over the last couple of weeks. And I think it has a lot to do with missing Caden Gooley. But before we get too far into it, we're going to say hello to our partners at Inchu Bijou. Inchu Bijou is a witchy goth glam jewelry store, and also they make all sorts of different things that you can find everything from keychains to stickers to bespoke pieces there. It's a women-run company, queer-friendly, and they do a lot of stuff for the community, so go check them out. They're at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise.
At the famous chateau at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise lies one of Montreal's coolest secrets, a glamorous gothic jewelry store owned and run by women. Inchu Bijou isn't just a business. They've built a community that supports bold creativity and expression. When I was first introduced to founder Astrid Episegomian's shop, I was floored by the detail, vision, and scale of what she's built from her own mind. I don't think anyone would call me goth, but I know an innovator when I see one. Along with building their own business, Inchu Bijou also hosts markets for vendors in their space called Marché Maleficarum, boosting their whole community. If you don't live in Montreal, explore inchubijou.com, where you'll find over 800 designs that range from affordable to bespoke. Check out Inchu Bijou right now, a Game Over partner from the beginning.
Welcome back to the show. I am Andrew Berkshire. This is Game Over Montreal, and if you like the show, make sure you like it on the stream, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, rate and review us, because it really does help us out. Subscribe on YouTube, and if you really like us, check out our Patreon, which is linked in every podcast, every live show on our YouTube page, on our official website, thegameovernetwork.com. And if you really enjoy hanging out with us, you can also join our Discord, where we have lots of different fun stuff, different rooms to talk about different stuff. So check that out. All right, I'm just going to check in with the chat here quickly before we get too deep into this game. Sizek says, that was very painful. Yeah, what happened to the good team I enjoyed watching? Piano Matt says, before Tuesday, Montreal was plus 10 in goal differential. 2 games later, they're not -1. Hey, you know, if you're going to regress to the mean, you may as well do it all in a couple of games against teams that you don't really care about. Sizek says 9 shots in the final 2 periods isn't good enough. Piano Matt, so did they just forget how to play defense all of a sudden? What's happening? Montreal MUFC says, if this team is not put through a bag skate in the early morning hours tomorrow, then we have a problem. I want to see some deserved harshness from the coaches from now on. Sizek says, I have nothing to back this up, but it felt like they have struggled the last 2 games against bigger teams that just grind them against the boards. We're going to talk about that in the second period, because I'm not trying to call you out, but this is a narrative that's being pushed by media and always gets pushed when the Canadiens lose a couple. It's bull. It's bull. Claire Capoletti, hi Claire, says the passing was hellaciously bad. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things were very bad in terms of execution. Montreal MUFC says, if cloning or resurrection was possible, I'd bring Victor Tikhonov back so he can strike the fear of God upon this team. Other than that, we've got Trinka here, always welcome. Organizationally, I think they're fine. They can adjust internally. This isn't a player problem. It's a growing maturity problem. They play well, and they just need to learn to play better. All right. From there, we will get into the show a little bit. So I think the feelings are justified based on the last couple of games. I understand the frustration. However, I think that the emotions are a little bit too high for the fan base right now. Just based on what I've seen on socials, the anger level is a little bit too much. Like, let's remember that the last game was their first regulation loss in something like 3 weeks. They haven't been playing very good lately, but let's be real. They've been finding ways to get points, and they've banked a lot more than they had at this stage last season. They're a much better team than they were last season, and I'm frankly not that worried at this stage. All right, let's put the chat on the screen also, by the way. I forgot to do that.
While you're browsing into Bijou's goth shop, head next door and discover Montreal's most unique selfie.
Oopsie, sorry guys. And I will switch the overlays back as well. There we go. All right, let's get you all up there on the stream chat so we can chat about this game. So I think this game was not nearly as rough as it actually looked. The first period specifically, the Canadiens were far and away the better team. Like, it wasn't even close. The Dallas Stars barely had the puck in that first period. They happened to score a perfect setup on their only power play of the period. But other than that, it was all Canadiens. And the wheels fell off in the second period. But that was after they started the period with 3 straight pretty strong shifts. They didn't generate any shots. They haven't been generating many shots at all lately. But overall, they were the better team. And then Newhook goes down, and the Canadiens got rattled. And they got rattled hard. And every single bounce went against them. And this is the thing that I think should be the focus more than anything coming out of this game. I know nobody's going to want to go back and rewatch this one. Understandable. But I would hope that the Canadiens, like video coaches and stuff, they go over it and they say, this is a game that you'd learn more throwing in the trash than you would obsessing over. Because, and I'll isolate this down to one play to make it an example, but there was a moment in the second period, I believe it was on the Canadiens power play, second wave, where Zach Bolduc enters the Dallas Stars zone. He executes a stick check on a Dallas Stars skater, removes the puck from this player's possession. The puck bounces off the boards, and Bolduc keeps going to chase down the puck. Except, instead of bouncing in a way that would be expected, the puck bounces off the boards, careens off at an odd angle, and goes right back onto the tape of the Dallas Stars skater, who's no longer even looking in the correct direction of the play. It just happened to go directly onto the player's stick blade, who then immediately finds another player streaking out of the zone for a clean zone exit. It's little stuff like that that is not a matter of playing poorly or playing well. It's a matter of sometimes when you have a biscuit shaped like what a puck is shaped like, bounces are weird. And sometimes the puck finds you and you can do amazing things. In some games, every single play seems to go against you. And I think that is more of the issue today against the Stars than anything else. Against LA, I think they played terrible. I think they did not meet expectations in that game. In this game, I think it got away from them mostly due to things outside of their control. Now, with that said, the Dallas Stars continually ran a play where they would have a late player trailing, coming through the right side with speed. The Canadiens just let that happen all game long. They did not adjust whatsoever. And I saw a few folks saying that New Jersey also executed that pretty well against the Canadiens. I don't remember if that play specifically was one of the routes that Jersey took to take over that game. But overall, the New Jersey Devils did not really outplay the Canadiens that game either. They had a lot of shots on goal, but they didn't generate much in terms of chances. Now, oddly enough, the same is kind of true of this game against the Dallas Stars. They didn't get that many high-quality chances, but everything they did worked perfectly. They'd send a terrible pass that would careen off of a guy's skates right to another player who had like perfect positioning. And like, yeah, credit to them for high level of execution. They're a great team, the Dallas Stars. They're in their competitive window. But this was not a game where one team outplayed the other team to the tune of 7-0. This is an extreme outlier game where one team got very fortunate and one team got very unfortunate, especially losing Alex Newhook, which that injury looked rough. It seems like the speculation is on the ankle, could also be a knee injury, although based on how he was moving around on the ice, probably ankle. I have a long history of ankle injuries, so I just don't want to see that replay anymore. And I hope he recovers quickly. I feel horrible for Alex Newhook, who every single time it seems like things have fit together for him, something like this happens. It's really, really unfortunate. Trinka says, I'm disappointed, not mad. Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway. MFM, hello. Cameron Tyre says, not getting the offense going has been the root of all evil with every loss this season. I mean, it's only been recently that the offense has been a little pop gun, right? As soon as the top line starts to slow down a little bit, though, things get dire quickly, especially with the Dock line not really producing outside of Kirby Dock. I think Gallagher's still an offer for goals in the year, not for lack of effort. He's been good. And Bolduc has been struggling big time. MFN says, we started to find, what would you say was the play that broke the team? 100% the Newhook injury. I think the Newhook injury and like the way that power play went after, that there just wasn't any energy. I find that's one of those things when a major injury happens and you get a power play, that power play is usually crap. Like, this is going way back. But for those who are old, like myself, if you remember when Max Pacioretty got injured, when Zdeno Chara tried to murder him by running him through a stanchion, the Canadiens, I believe, got a big power play out of that. They might have not. I don't remember. But they had power plays in the rest of that game. They were winning, I believe, 5-0 at that time. And the rest of that game, they just were not engaged. And I think Lucic scored, made it 5-1. They might have scored another one and made it 5-2 in that game. The Bruins never got back in it because the Canadiens wholly outplayed them in that game. But after that injury, it was like they did not want to play anymore. They just couldn't do it. And I think that there's an emotional factor that has to be understood when a player gets injured like that, where obviously the Pacioretty one was much worse. But, you know, it's sad. These guys are friends, right? They're coworkers, they're colleagues, they're comrades. To see a guy go down like that is tough, and to get over it and then everything kind of going against you. I think this is one where I kind of forgive the team, and I understand the idea of wanting a bag skate, but I would say the game against LA was the one where if you're going to bag skate them, that's the bag skate day. This one, I'm not too upset about in terms of player engagement or effort level. Yeah, it wasn't there the rest of the game, but I understand it a lot more on a human level. Steven LaRoussac says, from what I found, Habs are on average 6'1" and 196 pounds. Almost all team in the NHL average 6'1", a few at 6'2", and a few at 6'0". Habs aren't small, just haven't executed the last 2 weeks as earlier. Yeah, I agree. We're going to talk about that in a second. Let's switch over to the second segment because let's just breeze through this game. Why would we stick too heavily on one of these games here? This is not a game that you want to stick around for, I don't think, long term. We'll push through this one. But first, we got to tell you about one of our partners here, Le Saint Motel. So let's hear from them.
While you're browsing Inchu Bijou's goth shop, head next door and discover Montreal's most unique selfie studio. Whether you're looking to take some banger pics of your Halloween costume or cosplay, or you want to make some memories with friends, Le Saint Motel has you covered. Experience their bombastic decors that are always changing, hop in the ball pit, and take advantage of their extensive and flexible on-site lighting. Head to lesaintmotel.com to book your time in the studio, book private time where you and your friends will be the only ones allowed in, or book the space for an event. The dedicated, caring staff will make sure that you have a good time. I do have one warning for you before you book. If you have kids, they won't want to leave. Whether you're at the St. Motel or in Chubiju, tell them Game Over sent you.
Welcome back to Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire, your host for the evening, and we are in our second period now where we're going to talk about the size narrative, because I noticed this in the broadcast twice, and I like Frankie Corrado. Full disclosure. I think he's among the better play-by-play commentators in the league. I guess not play-by-play, sorry, color commentators in the league. However, there is this instinct with hockey media where whenever a team that is perceived as being small, aka has a couple of small players, as soon as they lose, especially if they lose a few times in a row, the size question begins to be brought up. Now, I understand that a little bit for LA because they're more of a like physical team. However, in this one, I don't understand where you even get that from. I think it's just pure laziness in analysis, and it just gets beaten over the head so often in hockey media that fans just accept it. And this is something that I don't want to denigrate anyone who believes this whole like size obsession thing, because one thing that you learn in going to school for politics is propaganda is everywhere and we don't talk about it enough. And the insidious thing about propaganda is that it doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't even have to be convincing. The way the human brain works is the more you hear something, the more you see it as legitimate. It's that simple. So if you hear something over and over and over and over again, your brain will begin to believe it, even if you know at the beginning that it's not true. This is why we have so much radicalization across the spectrum in Western society, let's say, but it hits hockey too. And this size narrative, like in what situation in this game specifically did size hurt the Montreal Canadiens? Because again, that first period, who was the dominant physical team? Montreal by leaps and bounds. Like the Dallas Stars could not even exit their zone in the first period. Everything was off the boards and out and then right back in. It was like running into a buzzsaw. Juraj Slafkovsky was like just tossing around Mikko Rantanen like he was a Muppet. It was hilarious. Arbor Xhekaj's out there throwing the body around. You know, it was not a size issue. What happened tonight was a skill issue more than anything, to be honest with you. So I think that we need to start pushing back on this size narrative, because we've been hearing this with the Montreal Canadiens for literal decades. Every single time they lose a couple of games, it's all over the radio and the broadcast. Size. But you never hear size talked about when they're winning. Of course not. It's just like back in the day. I remember talking to tons of people on the Habs beat saying that the Montreal Canadiens in around like the 2014 team were the best team in terms of, you know, they were just knitted together. They played for each other. They loved each other. That room was like so tight. And then the following year came around and things didn't go so well. And all of a sudden the same beat reporters are saying like, I've never seen a team so toxic. These guys don't like each other. The culture is terrible. Well, it's almost like how well people get along when they're in a small space together has a lot to do with how things are going around them. If a team is losing all the time, maybe a guy who you find slightly annoying is a lot more annoying because you're annoyed at losing. Whereas when you're winning, you don't care that that guy is a little bit annoying to you because he's your teammate and you're winning. So we need to separate things out and talk about them honestly instead of just buying into this crap. And I'm not trying to rip Frankie Corrado a new one. He is not alone in this, but the size stuff is such a lazy narrative. I think we got to just throw it in the garbage and start talking about things much more honestly. Piano Matt says, delayed reply, but Chara's hit on Pacioretty got him 5 in a game. No supplemental discipline. That was the whole ordeal. Yeah. It was 5 in a game. That's right. And that 5-minute power play, they did like nothing. If what I from what I remember. Piano Matt says Chara then proceeded to lie about not knowing it was Pacioretty, even though it was a revenge for Pacioretty shoving Chara after scoring on the OT goal. Yeah, if we go into the deep lore of that one, we're going to be here all night, because I remember so much of that whole situation, and I still find it ridiculous that it was allowed to go on as it went on. But I was having a conversation with a couple of Leafs fans tonight about how the NHL handles things, and with the Newhook injury. And then late in the game, I think it was the last goal, the seventh goal for Dallas, happened on an icing play where Mike Matheson very clearly was going to get the puck first. His stick, I believe it almost even touched the puck, but he was body checked before either player got to the puck. Similar to Newhook. Newhook was hooked down before he could get to the puck while winning a race for an icing. How many times this season, this young season, have we seen players interfered with on the way to get a loose puck on an icing play? I swear we've talked about this garbage for literal decades in the league. They don't care. This hybrid icing rule, I don't think it's changed a damn thing. It's sped up the game maybe on icing calls that are not close. But the entire purpose of changing that icing rule was supposed to be keeping players safe. They don't. It doesn't. You've isolated the only situation where icings are dangerous and exacerbated the importance of it. Like, what are we doing here? And honestly, the rubber band snapped for me with the NHL in the playoffs last year. Not for anything with the Habs, although that playoff series was horribly officiated. It was actually watching the Leafs when Sam Bennett elbowed Stollers in the head and took no supplemental discipline whatsoever. The NHL doesn't care about their players. They very clearly don't. Player safety is a complete joke. There is no consistency. They don't care about the rule book. So I don't see the point in, beating around the bush on that topic. I think it's very, very clear the NHL just straight up doesn't give a shit. The way the rules are designed is just to give them enough leeway to do whatever the hell they want in the moment. That's how the NHL works. It's WWE, folks. The more you understand that NHL officiating and enforcement of the rules is more entertainment than like fair sport, you will understand how the NHL works. You'll grow to accept, maybe not accept it, because we shouldn't accept it. We should fight for better rules and better enforcement in our game, but you'll understand where the NHL is coming from. Yeah, Trinka says the rules are vague on purpose. Exactly. Every bit of vagary is just an excuse so that they can go in and the people who are in charge can put their hands in and decide what they think the game of hockey should look like or the game of hockey should be. So it removes the objective and creates the objective. I mean, we've been sitting here for what? 2 decades that Ray Ferraro has been pushing for the international rules in terms of like crease violations. Just don't let guys in the crease. Make that the goaltender interference through line. If you go in the crease, the play just gets called dead. Blow the whistle. It's not like Brett Hull in the final. Like, you can just blow the whistle during play as soon as a guy goes in there. Brendan Gallagher might be upset, but he'll also have fewer goals called back. Piano Matt says the NHL has 2 officiating standards, one for regular season and one for playoffs, where you can do murder. Yeah, you can do murder in the playoffs if you're not a young player. If you're a veteran, yes. Trinka says, I was reading Jay Baruchel's book recently, and he was talking about how people were complaining about how the Canadiens lack a second-line center and are small down the center. Plus, so change. Yep. Yeah, it's always the same, right? Stephen Lewis says, as I said on Blue Sky, every team that loses a few games is small, or they have a soft players that play small. 100 hockey man talk. Yeah, it is. It's always the same. It's so lazy. And this is why, in large part, what I'm trying to do with Game Over Network is important. I think the standard that we've allowed to exist in the media ecosphere, not just in hockey, but media in general, is low and getting lower all the time. And I think we need to push back on that. All right. Crowbar says young teams are going to have tough stretches. Yeah, no question. No question. All right. Let's switch it up a little bit, and we'll go into the third segment where we can talk a little bit about the cascade effect. All right. Third period. So I think, and I haven't actually checked the data on this. This is just me speculating because I think this is how it's shaking out. I think the Canadiens have started to fall apart by the underlying numbers pretty far back. Not this week, but like a couple weeks ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago. And you can see it in their game where things are not as tight, things are not as connected. And I think a lot of it comes down to the loss of Caden Gooley. Caden Gooley is such a stabilizing force on that back end. And when you have Gooley and Hudson away from Dobson and Matheson, the flexibility having two top pairs is just astronomical in terms of what you can accomplish against most teams in this league. Is not saying that, Jaden Struble is a terrible player or anything, but I think we all know that Jaden Struble is not a top four defenseman. And he has the skills to play with Lane Hudson short term, but he's not the guy that you want staying with him long term. And he has a trend in his career where he'll have a good stretch of games, and then he has a pretty bad stretch of games. Unfortunately, the Canadiens don't really have an option to replace Caden Gooley other than Gooley right now. David Reinbacher is just getting back to it in the American Hockey League. And if you talk to people who watch the Laval Rocket regularly, they will tell you patience is a virtue here. Reinbacher is not ready. He's got some time that he needs to develop still. So I really do think that the breakdown effect of losing Gooley has just slowly filtered through the lineup, and you're seeing the warts a little bit as more players are being exposed. And now with Newhook, it's probably going to get a little bit tougher, right? They're going to have to find ways to get more out of less. And part of that's going to be probably leaning on the top line and hoping they get red hot again. But you've got to figure out something else for your second line as well. They switched to Demidov with Doc and I think Gallagher on that line. But I think there's got to be something figured out with Zach Bolduc because he does not look right lately. I think this is now 4 games in a row without a shot on goal. And frankly, he's a little bit behind the play in terms of just being involved. So I think there's probably something going on there. Maybe it's an injury. I don't know. But he's got to figure it out. I think that's going to be a big key over this next stretch of games for the Canadiens is if Bolduc can figure it out and get back to being the player he was at the beginning of the season. And I'm not saying score every game, but get back to that player where he was a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more involved, then the Canadiens' path forward is a little bit easier than it would be without him. I think if he's still struggling over the next couple of weeks, we're probably in for some more struggles here. MFM says, at least Caden is coming back soon. Yes, that's honestly going to be really, really important. Montreal MUFC says, Jaden Struble faces the same problem that plagued Jordan Harris's time with the Habs. I don't know. I think Jordan Harris is a bit of a more smooth operator than Struble. I think Struble at his best, Struble's best games are better than Jordan Harris's good games. Not his best games, but his good games. Maybe that's it. Maybe Struble's good games are better than Harris's good games, but Harris's baseline is significantly higher than Struble's. I feel like he's just much more consistent overall. Nat Petty is here. I'm not worried. A few bad games are to be expected. We need to have realistic expectations. You know what? I'm kind of just going over the stream chat here. So why don't I switch to the overtime segment, and then we'll talk about Natalie's opinion here, because I agree with you, Natalie. I think this is also one of the things that we have to realize with sports like hockey, where there's a lot of games, is nobody's good all the time. It is pretty much impossible to give your very best 82 games a season. And there's always going to be times where teams drop games in bunches, right? There's going to be sequences of the season that they aren't executing their best or they aren't playing their best. We just went through a stretch where the Canadiens weren't playing very well. Now we seem to be entering a stretch where the Canadiens aren't executing very well. The key is going to be getting the playing well back on track so that when the execution level comes back, they can capitalize on it. because what you don't want to come out of this situation where the Canadiens are getting their butts handed to them a little bit on the scoreboard, for them to get super lucky and then win a few games that they don't deserve and kind of buy into that playing style to get themselves out of it. I don't think that this is a team that you need to worry about that problem with, because I think the coaching staff is a lot more cerebral than the ones that we've had in Montreal where that specific situation has happened. Like, I've watched Canadiens teams under, say, like Michel Therrien start a season playing really good hockey, but not get the results, and then have a couple games where they play terrible and a couple goals go in and they manage to like sneak one out because Carey Price saves the day, and be like, oh, okay, well, we should just let teams get 40 shots all the time and bang in a couple of breakaways that we get while we like break their total zone control and buy into that system. This team, I'm not worried about that with. I think they've got enough going in the right direction that they're not going to let this blow them apart. And also, you look at last year, right? They started last season terribly. Unbelievably terribly. They looked a complete mess. Now, as much as this game was frustrating, the mess in terms of like chances against was not that bad. And I know that I'm saying that after they lost 7-0, but like, let's look at natural stat trick real quick. All right. And it wasn't a good game by any stretch of the imagination. However, the Dallas Stars got 18 scoring chances at even strength. Canadiens got 21. The Dallas Stars got 4 high danger chances at even strength. The Canadiens got 6. Like, does that tell the whole story? No, of course not. But it tells a wide angle of the story that should probably be a little bit more illustrative than the score to you. Again, all situations. Canadiens 27 scoring chances, Dallas 24. Canadiens 6 high danger scoring chances, Dallas 5. Expected goals, 55% in the Canadiens' favor. Now, I'm not telling you that the Canadiens played a good game. They were sloppy tonight. However, on balance, they produced more attempts at the goal, more high-quality attempts, but their shots all missed, their best chances, and the Dallas Stars ones all found the back of the net. Sometimes it's just like that. Kay is here. Hey guys, just dropping by now that I'm done crashing out real bad. Listen, we're all allowed to crash out, and I think that's especially valid now. Like, I posted on Blue Sky during the game that like everything in the world is terrible except the Habs were really good. So that was everybody's like, okay, we got this. As long as the Habs are good, I can avoid like crippling depression. And now the Habs are on a cold streak, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is terrible. But we've got each other. Kay says 20, 14, and 13 at around 74% according to Money Puck. Yeah, the top line was killer tonight. I mean, you look at the team without the top line, not so killer. But the top line itself were excellent. And that was even, Kay says, reports of Nick Demise are deeply exaggerated. Confirmation bias with people worried about him being hurt. I feel like the worry about Nick Suzuki being hurt is just after seeing other players be hurt. And everyone's like, well, now he's going to play 35 minutes a game, right? I don't think they're at a stage where he needs to do that anymore. Luckily, I do think he was fighting the puck a little bit tonight, but he was still effective. And in the third period, I liked what I saw from Nick Suzuki because he played pissed off. There were several little plays where a guy thought that he could just protect the puck by turning on Suzuki, and he just ran through them. And I like when Suzuki plays a little bit more physical because he's an absolute beast. Nat Petty says, Nick has plenty of duct tape and ice. He'll be playing 40 minutes tonight. Yeah. Yeah, Claire says, things aren't going so well there. Just ate a breadcrumb off the couch. Yeah, listen, we're all doing the best that we can, right? We're trying our best to get through this terrible situation worldwide. And the Habs are doing the same. They're trying to make it entertaining. Montreal MUFC says, now that we lost 4 of the last 5 games, while it outrageously dominated in 3 of those losses, what would you do if you were among the coaching staff? I think, honestly, before this game, I think the answer was pretty simple. It would have just been a simple flip. It would have been you take Joe Veleno out and you bring up Jared Davidson and you tell that line of Davidson, Anderson, and Evans, go out there, be assholes, guys. just be mean and create chaos. And I think they would do extremely well, and it would make the team a lot more fun to both watch and less fun to play against, I guess I would say. But now that Newhook's out, it becomes a little bit more precarious because you have to build two lines back, right? And the Gallagher Bolduc Doc line is not working with Bolduc specifically. He's kind of struggling. So the idea of putting Demidov on that line makes total sense for me. But then you've got Kapanen kind of floating. You're like, what do you do with Kapanen? I don't think you put Veleno on that line. He doesn't deserve to be moved up the lineup. And Bolduc, maybe he works with Kapanen. They're both got speed. They can skate. Maybe that will help. But I think you got to go to another call-up in that situation. Maybe it's a situation where you give Owen Beck a chance to shine. You need a little bit of offense. Maybe it's time to give Sean Farrell a try. And for those who are worried about going up against the Bruins with a bunch of small players, please remember that the Canadiens have historically upset the Bruins many, many times because of small players. So don't worry. Montreal MUFC says Veleno should be put on waivers and then report to Laval while we call up Davison and Beck. Yeah, I don't know how much longer Veleno's leash is. I understand Marty is a very patient coach. And I know that there was a quote recently talking about when they bring players into camp, they expect to give them a fair shot and such. But I guess the definition of fair shot needs to come into play there. And you have to ask, how long can you let something go before you make the decision that it's no longer working or it's not going to work? And I think we've passed that point with Veleno. I don't think that he's a bad player. I think there's some things about him that I genuinely like. He's almost always in the right place at the right time. So his instincts are good. He's going to the right places on the ice. But when he gets there, he doesn't seem to be able to make a play. And that's a problem. So maybe he's just a good AHLer at this stage, but I'm not seeing it in the National Hockey League. And I think they've got to try to get somebody who brings an element other than just placeholder energy. And that's probably too harsh, but that's the only energy that I've got from Veleno so far this season is just guy. And they need a little bit more than guy, especially now that Newhook is down. But I'd like to see them try to bring up some offense as well. They can't just go with grit. And that doesn't mean that they can't call up somebody like Florian Jacki, who he hasn't had a great start in Laval, but he can bring some offense. We've seen that. They can try something out. I think the nice thing about these Canadiens, Joshua Waugh is also an option. I know he's not everybody's favorite right now either, but he's a capable NHL player and has been so several times. So it's an option. The nice thing that the Canadiens have here is they have enough organizational depth to weather some of these losses, or at least a lot more than we're used to, even in the Canadiens' former competitive windows. When they would have a couple injuries, the people that they were bringing in to replace were not great. They were not great. Now they at least have some options here to play with. Nat Petty says, not Waugh, someone else needs a chance. Yeah, it's tough to just cut him out, but you're right that he has had more chances than most players in Laval. I feel like Sean Farrell is the guy who's been good enough consistently long that it makes sense to give him a shot if you want some offense. And also you're replacing Newhook, who is not a big guy, with a guy who's not big, right? So that could be a situation where it fits more naturally as a call up. But I'm open to hear anyone who wants somebody else up. Kay says, I don't know how you sell calling up Florian right now. It'll probably ruffle some feathers when he's not performing well to start. Yeah, that is unfortunately. He was one of the last guys sent down, right, in training camp. That does matter a little bit. I think Waugh is the highest in the pecking order in terms of experience, but managing personalities is half the job, if not more. So that's another thing that I'm honestly not worried about with the Canadiens. I know a lot of people get really freaked out about Arbor Jacki and also Juraj Slavkovsky for some reason, but based on how they react to the moves that the coaching staff usually makes, I think they have a pretty good handle on what these guys need to hear and what they need to, like, what needs to be done in order to motivate them properly. All right. I don't want to talk about this game anymore. I enjoy you folks, but frankly, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on that one tonight. So if you stuck around with us, please subscribe. We really love you. And if you really want to help us out, well, you can go check out this shirt on our website, The Game Over Network. TheGameOverNetwork.com. Sorry, I got confused there and started talking email talk instead of website talk. We have a whole shop there. We have lots of cool merch to support all 7 Canadian NHL teams and our amazing hosts who work across this great country. And yeah, help us out if you can. And if you can't, that's cool too. We all understand that it's tough out there for folks these days. So have a good one. We'll see you again on Saturday against the damn Boston Bruins. And I know people are worried about that. The Bruins are winning a lot right now, but that is not the team that they once were. Let's be real. If there's any situation that I think plays to the Canadiens' favor, it's playing against these Boston Bruins when they really need a kick-ass game. I would not be surprised if Saturday is a huge bounce-back game for your Montreal Canadiens. All right, we'll see you then. Later, folks.